Okay, I'm broadcasting there. Let me
and
do the Facebook.
okay.
Where did that go? Okay, I would like to go live. Huh. Well, I just had it. There was a go live button and it went away. Let me actually, I'm gonna, hello everyone. Hi, Travis, who's coming in. Travis, I'm trying to go live on Facebook and the go live button went away. What do I do?
You can do it. I have faith in you all.
This is always how it happens. I have one button to push and then it goes away. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna start from scratch. Go live on Facebook.
All those who stayed with us.
I've learned to keep all my descriptions copied on a Word doc so that I can do this quickly.
Yeah.
So Barney, you can keep throwing names at me while I tech check. I don't think that's going to distract me too much.
Okay. Laura the Weapon.
I don't remember that.
Junaid, whose name was a special 41. No.
Yeah, I kind of got ahead of the crowd, which is not surprising then later on, given
GQ and Switch, but they were probably behind you. GQ and Switch.
Nope, I don't remember.
Because that year we actually had 17 people from your class stay with us.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so we were, and we went for Rolling Thunder. He said, we went out up the trail and Trail Angel them for a number of times, including at Cradle Lake. He says, you're either my trail angels, my personal trail angels, or you're stalkers.
Ha! Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think they probably decided Trail Angel, huh?
Yeah, we're still good. You know, for some of these people, we are still good friends with.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me.
Did you stay with Bob Reese at the very beginning to get to the trailhead?
I did. I sure did. I went to the San Diego Zoo, and then yeah, the next day I started the trail. So.
Oh, so you've driven out with him on Highway 94, where on any curve he only has two wheels on the ground.
I don't remember that. It was definitely all an adventure, but I don't remember that. I started like May 11th, and back then that felt not abnormal. And so it's pretty surprising for me now that people start so early.
Well, part of that is the creature of the permit system. It's forced people to the outer ones.
That's true.
That's its own topic. Let's not get into that one. It's not off limits, but let's not get into that one.
Okay. It's not on my list.
We got so many more fun things to talk about today.
Okay, let me.
You had a high snow year, very high.
It was a high snow year. Thank you for reminding me of that.
And in fact, when Rolling Thunder and Gobi came to resupply us over Kearsarge Pass,
yeah,
because they'd hiked in 2006, they came in so we could stay in country for 11 full days. They hiked in, and they said on the way in they practiced. He said, "Here's what we cannot say. We can't say the snow was this high last year. The snow was up to here last year. That sign was buried last year."
I got to the Sierras in like early June, and I just took a couple weeks off. I am very Southern, so snow terrifies me. So I didn't go back in until at least like June 21st, June 22nd, and it still was super intense. So, when people go into this year as early June, it just, I think that was above my skill level.
Well, you survived, and
Oh, here.
I see we're now on Facebook Live, so
Okay.
technically we're doing, and, as much as you and I can just sit here and chat away, randomly, you probably have an agenda of sorts.
Yes, here's what I am doing right now so everyone knows. I streamed live at Blue Ridge Hiking Company. And so hopefully that is now streaming on Appalachian Trail Conservancy. The one thing I didn't do in my rush to find that go live button is I usually also cross stream on my personal Facebook page. So I just did a post to direct people to the other two sites. So these are problem solvers, these are hikers. Hopefully we will figure it out and get it connected.
One more time, making lemonade out of lemons.
Sure. Where I was joking because I do a lot of public speaking, and before COVID, two of my main topics were adaptability and resiliency. And I was like, I got to get some new topics. Like we've all mastered those after the past year. So now it's on to like recovery and reinvention. But speaking of all of those things, really, speaking of resiliency and adaptability and recovery and reinvention, those are all concepts that are in today's Armchair Adventure Book Club pick. So we're doing Journeys North today with our guest author, which is Barney, otherwise known as Scout Man. He is coming in today from San Diego near the Pacific Crest Trail. Scout is a Triple Crown hiker. So he's completed the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, and Continental Divide Trail. He is a beloved trail angel, which I'm sad because I just found out that he started doing this, maybe the shuttles to the PCT terminus the year I hiked the PCT 2006, but I did not meet him then. And so now he's had over 7,000 people who he has helped either shelter or shuttle before the start of their PCT hike.
I don't know to interrupt, but
yeah,
it's not he and his wife and 81 other volunteers.
yes, thank you. That is, yes, very important distinction. So Scout and Frodo and an army of trail angels have helped over 7,000 hikers begin their journey. And Scout has also done so much within the trail community to give back. He's worked with the Pacific Crest Trail Association and the Continental Divide Trail Coalition. And he's also now on the Partnership for Trails, which I'm hopeful we'll hear a little bit more about later. But to start, this is really fun. We're going to start with some rapid fire get to know you questions. You ready for this, Scout?
Yep.
Okay. What is your favorite food on trail?
Dinner of
Dinner.
Any dinner. Dinner of foil pouch chicken with stovetop stuffing and Knorr, and 1/2 a packet of Knorr soup mix.
All right, we're gonna need that recipe in our comments after the talk. That sounds like fun to make. What is your favorite food off trail?
When I'm hiking, anything in a greasy dive, but particularly a milkshake. Well, banana milkshake I might turn down, but otherwise there's no milkshake I don't like.
Yeah, I love food you don't have to chew. Just go straight down, all the energy right away. Okay, if you could hike with any historical figure, who would it be?
Catherine Montgomery, the mother of the Pacific Crest Trail.
Cool. Okay, now if you could hike with any modern day personality, who would you pick?
My wife, Frodo.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that because I can hear him.
Yeah, I know. I love that. I love that we get Frodo in the background. That is great. Okay, if you could hike right now, I know it's COVID and it's weird, but if you had a magic teleporter to take you anywhere in the world to any trail, where would you go to hike?
Well, I spent half day yesterday on my next hike, which is the Arizona National Trail. And so I'm focused on that, and that's where I want to go next.
Cool. Are you gonna section hike it or through hike it? What's your plan?
Uh, Northbound, starting a little bit late, April 1st. That's the plan right now. I got an itinerary. Uh, I'm getting for the first time since 2013 a new pack. My pack has the entire AT and CDT on it.
Okay, well, here's our product plug. What pack are you getting?
Oh, Z packs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
Although since we're doing a product plug on the PCT, we had an 8-ounce Gossamer Gear G5, which we love too.
Yeah, we're a big fan. We use the Gossamer Gear Mariposa on all our hiking trips. So it's just a great pack.
And
Okay.
Ben Van Pesky, the owners or the original owner and founder, is a great guy too. So I'd pick him on my list of who to hike with too.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so last question. If you could only hike one trail, like one trailhead for the rest of your life, you had to pick one, what would it be?
One trailhead. Southern Sierra, heading north out of Trail Pass, Cottonwood Pass area.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm glad we don't have to pick just one. You have covered lots of trails. And today we're talking about the Pacific Crest Trail, which you share your journey and many other hikers' journeys in your book, Journeys North. It was really great to read your experience and also hear the voices of other hikers in the book and get their experience. So a couple questions just to start off. Your background is you're a lawyer. And you don't see many lawyers then transition into Triple Crowners and Trail Angels. So what type of law did you practice and how long did you want to take a break and go hike a long trail for?
Boy, I could write a book on that question. So when I'm asked what kind of lawyer, the answer I like to give, if you were and I on trail, I'd say I was a kind lawyer. And that's
Mm,
hard. I was a litigator, real estate. And to treat other people with respect and dignity, at the same time zealously representing your client, that was a very small eye in a needle. It was a challenge for all 25 years doing it. And I proceed to unpack that and tell you stories for a half hour. We can't, but it was a challenge. And so the most important thing on the day I retired after 25 years, retired as managing partner of a small firm here in San Diego. My partner of 20 some years calls and says, Barney, what are you thinking the day you're retiring? And here's what I got to tell him, Jennifer. I got to tell him, I haven't thought about it once today.
hmm.
The most important thing to me today, and the only thing I'm thinking about is at 2:00 is my first deadline for Backpacker magazine.
Oh,
And that's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah. And we pointed to doing the PCT for quite a while, maybe a
mm,
decade. We both, as I recounted in the book, we both had to fight to take time off. I mean, Frodo, she was a high school biology teacher, and she basically looked at her principal and even had to get permission from the San Diego City Schools superintendent. She basically said, your choice is whether I come back or not, because I'm going.
yeah,
And
that was interesting. It sounded like it was harder for her to get time off than for you to take time off from your law practice.
it
Uh,
was, we brought in some good people, and I basically traded time, money for time. This was important.
yeah,
And uh, I'm so glad I did.
yeah. How old? Maybe you say this in the book, but how old were you two when you started the PCT?
I was 55 and she was 48.
Okay, and your kids were at a point too where you were able to go do this at that point.
Yeah, we only had a one still in college, and we
Mhm.
must have planned this out well 22 years before, because we had a daughter who had just graduated UCLA, and she came and stayed in the house, and she did our resupply. So we planned it out well.
It's the reason we have children, right?
Right,
Because in
yeah,
like
so
20
they can
years,
help
we're
us.
going to need someone to send us a resupply. Um, So it sounds like the PCT was on your radar for a long time. You were working towards it and planning for it and dreaming about it for maybe a decade. You've also now, like you said, you've written for Backpacker, you've done coffee table books, and you wrote Journeys North about your PCT hike. So was your intent from the beginning that you wanted to write about the adventure as well?
Yes. And we have to go back a ways because uh, 1980, how's that going back a ways?
Yeah,
Uh, 1980,
before my
1983.
time.
Yes, before your time. I'm a newly minted lawyer. I'm out there. Um, and I got uh, bit by the bug, bit by my muse. I set aside 3 years. We lived like paupers, like a church mice, because I wanted to write the next great American novel. Maybe I did.
Mm.
Um, but I had interest in New York, never signed contract. And then you'll appreciate this. We had our firstborn, and it was time to,
Get it
it's
real
time to
time.
have some means.
Yeah.
Our first piece of new furniture in 5 years was a crib.
Yeah.
We were sharing a 600 square foot duplex uh, with my brother for 6 months. He moved out the day he was born, so it was time to move on.
Yeah.
Uh, so this was always been in the back of my mind, this dream of getting a book like Journeys North published.
So it's actually like a double dream. I mean, to hike and then also be able to write and write about it, were two dreams realized, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you get out there, and in your book right away, the thing that sticks out to me is this connection and relationship with other hikers, and how quickly you start to build a trail family out there. And even earlier when we were just doing a tech check, I was saying, I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail in 2006. You hiked it in 2007. You asked me who I hiked with, and I was like, not many people. It was pretty solitary as far as my experience goes. So, did you expect to have that trail family or bond or relationship? Were you looking for that, or did it take you by surprise?
Took us both a bit by surprise. We've been both backpacking since teens, and we know what we love the landscape, the challenge, the every day something that sits there and stops you in the track because it's so beautiful, so wonderful. Um, the uh, what we didn't realize was how much the trail would be around people,
Mm,
and just how important that would be. That we'd see someone for 15 minutes, literally, and then meet them a month later, and and it's hugs, and it's like seeing a best friend, and we have stories to trade, and we would leapfrog. So it wasn't, we didn't have as solitary as experience of you, but half the nights we slept by ourselves,
yeah.
and we rarely hiked with people on top of people. But we formed such close bonds. We had a number of people out there who would call us our, we call them our trail daughter or trail son, and they, call us trail mom and trail dad.
Yeah, and that was one thing I really just appreciated about your book, was it was your journey, and your adventure with Frodo, doing it as a married couple, and then you brought in these other hikers who were a part of your experience, and two in particular were these really, just engaging and also strong young women who you met on the trail. And I was interested in, and first of all, like at the end, when you decided you wanted to write this book, did you have all the information you needed, or did you need to reach back out to them to see if they would share the journals and backstory and thoughts that you didn't get to see on the trail? And, why was it important to you to include more experiences than just your perspective?
The story of our hike was so much beyond the two of us, and the
Mhm.
stories I wanted to tell. Out there, I became privy to uh, such searing and moving stories that people had done in their life, and that's what I wanted to tell. We're out here doing this thing, and we have adventures, and we have some searing times on the trail. Very true, but also what people brought. I mean, Blazer. A not uncommon question on the trail is, how long you've been thinking of doing it? Like you just asked me a while
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
You know. And when people had asked that, hikers from Circle Blazer, who was then 25, would say, "Ha! 3 weeks before I started the trail, I announced to my surprise and my friends, I'm shaving my hair and I'm hiking Pacific Crest Trail."
Mhm.
And we'd all laugh and chuckle and move on. And it wasn't until 5 months after the trail that I saw her, and that she told me what had actually set her loose up there. And I was the first person she told. And she carried this baggage on her shoulders. The things we carry out there. So I really wanted to share that. Um, and I, uh, Blazer, Dalton, Nadine, Tony, I knew hints or some deep segments of their stories. But afterwards, I did for Journeys North, I interviewed 70 different people, and
Mhm.
the primary other characters, if you will. Blazer and I, we had over 10 separate interviews.
Mhm.
Uh, Nadine a number of times went to where she was living in the same with Tony and Dalton, and that these people trusted me with the stories still amazes me, still does. I like as a catchphrase. I like to say that the book is a Wild meets the Breakfast Club.
That's pretty good. I would have to agree with that. Yeah, I, as a writer, find it much more difficult to write other people's journeys because it's such a way to do it well in a way that represents it authentically and in a way that they're also happy with. But you did it really well, and I'm also interested because one thing I like to think about, I've always enjoyed thinking about this, and especially now as we try to like bring more focus to diversity on the trail, but you did all these interviews. And can you tell me one thing that felt really different for you between your experience as someone who's a little farther along in life hiking with your wife and these like young women? Like, how was the trail experience different for you all? And then what is the one commonality between Nadine and Blazer, yourself and Frodo, but all the interviews you did? Like, if you had to pull out one common theme of connection or a lesson that people really embraced on the trail, what would that be? So, what were the differences you were taken by, and what were the commonalities?
So the differences with Frodo and I at our both stage in life and being a married couple. For one, back then, there were even fewer couples hiking the trail,
Mhm.
percentage wise, not even number. I could tell you, I think every of the 300 people who started our year, that was the total that started. Um, there were, I think 12 or 15 couples. That's all. So we were rare, and we felt that. Um, but what we had resources, both network of people up and down the trail, and to be honest, the resources money wise.
Yeah.
Um, and so one of the big differences um, uh, was, in town, um, we could help people, treat people, and it made a huge difference. And we were we felt, today we talk about being aware of privilege,
Mhm.
and even back then we were aware, and uh, thankfully, numerous times we had opportunity, and we were able to share that. And these strong Blazer and Nadine and we had ours, uh, Br- Breeze and Sage, Feather and Heidi, all these wonderful, strong women, most of whom started by themselves.
Mhm.
Uh, gosh, what's very different, but the theme was, they were they were willing to step completely out of lives and take a challenge. And in
Mhm.
2007, how many young women were doing that? I'm going to take 5 months, get off the track that my parents and everyone else expects of me, and,
Right.
and do this huge thing. And I'm sure you got this too. You did the PCT back in your 20s. What's the two questions, especially a woman gets? Are you carrying a gun? And who are you going with? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, what, in all your interviews, And you had a challenging year too. And I want to get to that, especially, winter weather set in early for y'all, and it was tough to get to the border. But again, is there a word that you feel like unifies the class of 2007 in your mind?
Oh, unifies. Resilience.
Yeah.
You mentioned it earlier as one of your talks, and sometime you'll have to send me a link. I'd like to hear that because I riff on that. We get
Mhm.
asked here. I'm sorry, I'm going to go sideways just for a moment. My wife
Yeah.
accuses me of doing that.
Take a
We get
detour.
asked here all the time. People come. We have 40 people sleeping at our house, and someone comes and say, can you tell who's going to make it and who's not? And the answer is absolutely not. I've seen people from both gear, body build, and otherwise you might think, oh, well, make it and be successful, have a fun time out there too. But if I had one trait that chooses for the highest percentage make it, and that's the word used, resilience. I taught backpacking. I had backpacked for, 40 years when we started. Repeatedly, I changed and changed again techniques. I'd see, hey, on a long hike, this what I've always done. And I look and say, that's working and working much better. I'm going to do that. And then changing a week later or a month later, that sort of resilience. And when you get slapped in the face, as you inevitably do, and repeatedly.
Yeah, resilience is an easy word to say. It's a very hard concept to practice. And even defining it at times can be difficult. My personal definition is this like crazy stubbornness with an innate ability to adapt. That to me is resilience. But resilience and a lot of us hikers are stubborn to a fault. And the PCT for me was such a different experience because I was an East Coast Southern hiker and I got out there. I actually loved the desert. Like I was like, bring it on. It's 100 degrees. It's dry heat. Like everyone else is melting and I was on cruise control. And the first day I saw snow, I almost cried. I was like, I can't do it. But the conditions on the Pacific Crest Trail can be severe. And I think every hiker at some point has to face the decision of whether it is safe to continue or whether it is smart to backtrack. And sometimes that comes in the Sierras and your journey, and along with the friends and trail family that you hiked with. You really, had quite an experience in Washington State. First going through the closed but open Glacier Peak Wilderness, and then also hitting really bad winter weather near the border. So I'm just interested to get your take on, when do you push forward? When do you know it's right to turn back? And how do you make the best decision on the trail?
Yeah. So on the CDT, Connemara Trail, where my wife was often doing support, when she dropped me off, and at that time we've been married 40 years, when she dropped me off and I'm going off to embrace the brutality and the CDT by myself, her last words to me were not, I love you. Her last words to me were, make wise decisions.
Mhm.
And here's the thing, at the end of our trek, as I describe at the end of the last third of Journeys North, is almost that. In fact, folks, when you read it, be a little bit concerned if you start at at 9 or 10 o'clock. I've had people, I got an email 5 a.m. and said, Scout, I just finished about you down. I thought I just read some pages and go to sleep. So be aware of that. But we started 3 different times, 60 miles from the Canadian border, because we got hit by once in a generation snowstorms, right? And I wrote a separate article a decade ago about the people who were caught on the trail. You had 91 Pacific Crest through hikers in the state of Washington, primed to finish, when they had end of September, back to back snowstorms. And what did they do? And in fact, we became in Little Winthrop, the second time we came out, we became the cause celebre, and people were chatting about us. And nobody's saying, why isn't the Forest Service doing something? Why aren't they forbidding him from going out? This is dangerous. And I interviewed the 2 Forest Service rangers in town. And these 2 women, they'd been 20-year plus rangers. And they told me By the time Pacific Crest Trail through hikers get up this far north, they make sound decisions.
Mm.
And I interviewed a number of other people who did some of the same things we did. They went over one pass, down, another pass, and they finally hit the pass where to go on, they'd be putting themselves at real risk and potentially others who have come to rescue them. And each and every one of those people, when they got to that moment, they made the right decision. I didn't find anyone out there, who did something I would classify as stupid. Yeah. And so the one rescue that was mounted,
Right.
for Nadine and her dog Patch and Chris, they were fine. They made a plan. It was that others had gotten worried, and that 2 weeks before, the Washington Search and Rescue had actually come close to losing someone, and they hadn't acted. So they threw 60 people, 2 helicopters, and everything they could in that search for Nadine.
Yeah, that was interesting. And, I don't want to give away the book because I know a lot of people pick it up afterwards, but you start early on with this cliffhanger scene that involves Nadine, and you do in the beginning just go, oh my gosh, like what is this book going to be about? But you get to know Nadine through your writing throughout the book. And by the time we were towards the end, I was like, I'm not worried about her. Like, I didn't even know what had happened, but I was like, she's got this, so the anxiety decreased throughout the read. I also just, trail books, one reason I love them is because they're always about more than the trail. And in your book, there's certainly themes of independence and empowerment. There's themes of like facing career setbacks or life challenges and overcoming them. There were also several moments where I thought you had some really nice like marital advice or relationship advice. And I really appreciated how when you guys were up in that horrible weather, you said that you and Frodo had given each other this right to veto. Like it was something that just felt unsafe or wrong in someone's bones. They had the right in your relationship to veto it, and it had to be respected by both parties. And she pulled veto, and I loved how in that moment you're like, okay, I turn around and go because we are a team and this is my partner and we give each other that right. So I really like that. I'm going to talk to my husband about vetoes tonight and how to employ them. And so you might have to be our jury for when we use our vetoes. But so obviously, and we want to open pretty soon because we love questions from the audience. So I'm not going to ask too many more questions, but you have had this, 15 plus year relationship with the PCT. Obviously, it has changed a lot since we hiked back in 2006, 2007. I'm interested in, just from your perspective, like what are the positive changes in the past 15 years, and what are some of the not so positive changes that you've also seen over the past 15 years?
So I've never been in the service, but I've often read, Marines will always, a guy's been in for a week longer, and he'll say, well, you should have been in the old Corps. And sometimes there's a little bit of that attitude about the PCT.
Yeah.
Because I actually, I do write a lot of the Pacific Crest Trail history. So I've sat and spent time with people hiking the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, in the aughts, as you and I did. And now we live with every year with about a third to 40% of that year's class stays at our house. And we keep in touch with some of them. The most important thing is what hasn't changed. This remains an epic pilgrimage. Iconic. It is a connected line in the 21st century now to the most populous state in the country, California, that is more than half in actual wilderness. And that's a treasure. Now, is there more people? Yeah. And so the significant changes that has done, it is harder to have a solitary experience. Still somewhat possible, but it is harder. There's a bit more partying. There's one of the biggest changes is not people, it's electronics. So in our era, the big questions would be, how much water are you carrying? how much you're starting with. And here, where people talk to each other starting, what size external battery pack you're carrying. It's everyone's connected to this thing. Ah, there's our grandson.
Oh,
What can I say? Um, which is a change. Um, yeah, yeah. What's also in the last 15 years is used to have this network of trail angels,
mhm.
and that has fallen by the wayside. Right, this you know, 4 or 5 traditional houses that would be open, 6 I think our year, uh, and the numbers have completely outstripped it. So the 2019 was the last year for 2 other iconic ones, wonderful people, the Andersons and the Softleys. Um, and what I think may come and replace it is a bit like on the Appalachian Trail. Is there people are really passionate about and want to touch hikers that way? It's the open hostel, it's a bit like your bunkhouse, and
Mhm.
they charge a minimal amount, enough to make to hopefully justify it for themselves, and create this warm space. And the numbers are finally up in the PCT to that amount. But the biggest thing for me is that uh, it still remains this iconic one-off, moving, life-changing experience.
Um, yeah, I mean that, yes, I agree with all that. Still very valuable, even though it does change, and a lot of the change is very positive. I think there's a lot more support for the PCT now. And you're in a rare echelon of hikers who I think have this long trail experience and then give back in quantities that are really hard to understand. So you have been a dedicated trail angel and you've served and volunteered on numerous trail organizations and boards. So what compelled you to want to give back in that way? And also, what has been your most rewarding efforts to try to give back to the trail? Like, what do you value the most amid all of it?
Um, why? Why
Mhm.
is because 1,600 miles up the trail. Maybe I'm a little slow. I'm hiking to the Shasta City that morning. It's going to be a 10 by 10. We're going to get breakfast, and it hits me, Northern California, and a bit just as I said, I'm in Northern California. It's 2007, and I'm hiking this modern miracle.
Mhm.
It is. It truly is that we have this thing, and it's still there. Um, People must be working on this, and when I come back, I got to raise my hand and pitch in, and that's the truth. Uh, I also saw being out there with who else is hiking on the trail, and I have a bit of a rare combination of skill sets. I can do the suit thing well.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, uh,
Not
we
many hikers can, so good for you.
I can do the suit thing well. I have some leadership skills and writing skills and such. And I got on came back, and within 6 months, I'm on the board of the Pacific Crest Trail Association. 3 months after that, I got cornered by their executive director and board chair and said, "Will you serve as our fundraising chair?" So fundraising chair there, board chair of the PCTA for 3 years. And then stepped off at about the same time that I was getting involved with the Continental Divide Trail Coalition. And then these days, I've stepped off as their board president. In the last 2 years plus, I've been president of the Partnership for the National Trail System. And you're nodding your head, but it's so little known, and it does such great work. We get face-to-face meetings with the chief of the U.S. Forest Service and the highest levels, and we bring all 34 nonprofits together, including the bigs like the ATC. And for 15 of our national scenic and historic trails, their nonprofit trail organization doesn't even have an employee. So what am I most proud of? Yeah. For each of these, so much of this is what I call sausage making. It's
Yeah.
not pretty work. So I have been closeted in a room with 8 other people, Pacific Crest Trail Association board, and we are spending a full day on bylaws. But if you don't have that brick underneath, and in so many places, if you don't have that, the lobbying, the policies, all this sausage making work, then I can't go out in the month April 1st and start in the AZT because people have done it there. And I'm really proud that I've been able to be a part of what is at times just literally work.
Yeah.
Work in a closed room. Yeah.
Yes, writing bylaws and governance is not the fun part of volunteering. I would much rather do trail crew than that. So thank you for making that sausage for all of us. And also the Partnership for the National Trail System for our ATC friends out there. The former CEO of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, Ron Tipton, also serves with that organization. And it's important to remember, I think we all have our favorite trails and trailheads, but we are really in this as a national trail community to protect and preserve our national scenic trails. And that's a good reminder that people from all over the country come together and make the sausage, even when it's really not fun, so that we can
even if they're vegetarians.
Even if they're vegetarian, even if they're vegan. You talked about that in your book too. You know, maybe you're vegan, but you're willing to make the sausage to make the trails better. So anyways, I do want to open it up. I know we have a bunch of audience questions that are coming in on my phone and also from Zoom. So we'll get started with some Zoom questions, and feel free if you haven't written one and you want to add one to the chat, now is the time to do it. So I'm sure you get this, Scout, and it may be like choosing one of your children, but someone asked, out of the big three trails, because you've done the AT, PCT, and CDT, which is your favorite and why?
Yeah. So the Pacific Crest Trail, and it's not just because that's the one that I hike with my wife and the one that she tells me I have to say. I grew up in Southern California. I fell in love with backpacking at age 13, hiking the Sierra Nevada. It's my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I will say it's a little like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. One's one extreme, one's the other extreme, and on so many fronts, the PCT is the happy medium. It's wild, but it's not embraced brutality CDT wild, and it's not as much as walking through sometimes neighbors' backyards and going deli blazing every day. I'm stopping at a deli as the AT can be.
Yeah. There is something to that first love. I mean, for me, the Appalachian Trail is my backyard, and it's where I had that life-changing experience. And I've shared it in different ways with my partner and my spouse too. So I get that. Yeah, I appreciate. I would have picked that the PCT was probably your favorite. Another question from our Zoom is, which of the big three trails would you recommend for a first time through hike?
So it's the same answer to the question. If I'm only going to do one, which one do I do? Which is a similar question I get asked often. And again, I think hands down, personally, the Pacific Crest Trail. Views. It has the views per mile or 10 miles are, there's no comparison. Even the CDT is quote wild. A lot of the country has been it's been cattle grazed. It's been the CDT. There's a fifth that's still on roads of one fashion or another.
Yeah.
And I grew to love the green tunnel on the AT. But I still love that so many places, the guidebook, what's his name? The
AWOL.
AWOL will tell you today, here are the 3 places you'll have a view.
A view. Yeah.
If you step off the trail. Yeah.
Yes. We're all about the biodiversity on the East Coast. So we like the plants, the details are in the forest.
And the history.
And the history, yeah, there's a lot to love about every trail for sure. And it is fun. I mean, they are like siblings, like they each just have their own personalities, and one's not better than the other. It's just about where you really like feel your soul connect. So you not only have been prolific as a hiker backpacker and a volunteer, now that we're talking through this, I'm like, can you maybe give me some tips on time management, not during our Zoom, but afterwards? Because The other thing is you've written like numerous books and articles. You have beautiful coffee table books out there. So can you tell us about some of your other projects, and do you have anything else on the horizon, like the next great American novel? What's your next creative project that you want to pour yourself into?
Uh, when I'm out on a jog these days, or when I'm musing, that's the question, is what's the next? Not, I have a couple, 3 or 4 books pulling at me, but one that's starting to really focus on is I wrote a 5-page piece for Backpacker a year ago about about a guy I found who hiked the entire divide, Mexico to Canada, in 1924.
Oh my gosh.
And I found his best friend's daughter, who's 90, and she kept his name's Peter Parsons. She kept Peter Parsons' handwritten journal all these years. And
Wow.
he carried a 2-pound Kodak camera on his waist. Never developed, the negatives were processed, but never pictures printed from them. And we have 300 pictures.
That's incredible. Is that like well known? I mean, do you think, Jim Wolfe or people who have put together the CDT knew about?
No,
You said Peter, what was it? Not
Peter
Parker,
Parsons,
that's Spider-Man,
right,
right? Who is
right,
it?
right.
Okay.
Spider-Man. Peter Parsons. No,
Parsons.
Jim Will found about it the same time when he read my CDT coffee table book and was surprised. Now,
Oh,
this was someone, the story, the parallel story of how we found him is just as amazing. I mean, it literally starts with an archivist in Portland, Oregon, Mazamas, because I'm there doing some research on some other PCT stories, shares with me one of his treasures. He brings out a 1924 Summit Register from Mount Jefferson in Oregon, and it's got one entry that summer. And this guy got chatty. He describes his route up, route down, and then he finishes with these 2 sentences. And he says, "It's August 24th. He says, this is a continuation of a trip I began at Douglas, Arizona, up the entire Rocky Mountain Divide to the Canadian border. And he began it on April 14th. And find it from that one little snippet, trying to find who he was. Says, there's lots of Peter Parsons, excuse me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's
not
one thing I'm thinking of.
not to put any pressure on you, but that sounds amazing. And
Oh,
3 years, it would be the 100-year anniversary of his trek. So it gives you just enough time.
yeah.
Pub date, 3 years. We'll have you back on Armchair Adventure. Talk about Peter Parsons. It's a
You'll
date.
like it. You'll like it too, because I intend to, I think, feature alongside him a woman who it turns out was the first national park ranger at Yellowstone. Female,
Cool.
sorry. That's its own
That is
story. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's awesome. I just want to respect everyone's time and get to a few more questions. Maybe we'll take 2 or 3 from our social feeds. So someone asked, you were again like very forthcoming about your relationship and your marriage in the book. You talked about when you and Frodo had hard times in your marriage, when you had been apart for a season. But on the trail, you seemed very in step and very in sync, and that is rare. Like you said, it's hard to find married couples or partners who are, off trail, who are also very compatible hiking partners, especially if they didn't meet on trail. But someone asked, was there ever a time on the PCT where one or both of you was ready to just quit or take some time off?
You went a different direction. So in Northern California, her feet were really hurting her. In
Mm-hmm.
Northern California, which is beautiful. If it was anywhere else, you'd say, oh, this should be a national park. But it's in the same state as the Sierra Nevada.
Yeah.
And she started thinking the cost benefit ratio was maybe, and there's still 1,000 miles left. So that's hard. And I've heard her say that if she wasn't hiking with me, we didn't have that momentum, she might have thought about quitting then. Yeah. But one of the things also we got lucky is for 5 years before that, I was a Boy Scout Scoutmaster, and I would always position myself behind for a week-long trek behind the slowest boy. So even though our paces, hers and mine are different, I do hike faster naturally. She is so much faster than the slowest boy. It's pitiful. And we also had every day in the morning, we'd have when one of us would go off trail for a constitutional, we'd have an hour or so that we're by ourselves too.
Um, yeah, it's good to have that time together as a couple who hikes together and time apart. I remember the first through hike I did with my husband was the Colorado Trail. And for the first like 3 days, he just didn't stop talking. And, finally I turned, I'm like, you don't have to talk all the time. And he had heard me just like reminisce about all these other trails and the trail family and the friends you meet. And he knew I had such a close bond with them that he thought like we just got out there and we needed to talk all the time to form those memories. And I was like we can have quiet too. We can listen to the birds. Okay, so one more question from online. Someone asked, what did your kids think about their parents going off and doing the PCT together, and then also the fact that you then took off and did several other long trails?
Well, they weren't surprised. That's for sure. And our son and daughter-in-law for their honeymoon 10 years ago, they did the Jarmuir Trail.
Oh, cool.
They all joined us in one way or another, and even on the later two hikes where Frodo didn't hike with me, they in some manner had a finger in. Our son joined 2 different times. I see my wife looking at me. She's got something she wants to say.
Oh, good.
More about that.
Hi, Frodo.
She doesn't. Yeah.
Oh. Not on camera. She'll tell you later.
So ever since, it's like for kids anyway. Parents are there to embarrass our kids. We're going, when they're teenagers, we walk into a parking lot and we start singing or dancing, and they distance themselves from us. And this is just one more way that at times we embarrass them. But they also, there's a piece that I know that they really love it. I mean, we get, each of them has had, I think on more than one occasion, experience that a friend finds out that that their parents are Scout and Frodo, and our son will get an email that said, "Do you know your parents are legends?"
But that's because of the training.
Well, your kids, Jennifer, will someday we'll get that with you. You're too. They go, do you know your mother's Odessa, and she set these records.
We'll see. Right now, we're still focused on what's for dinner and virtual school, but maybe one day. So we'll go ahead. This is about when we wrap up, and this is just like been such a sweet conversation, not just to hear about your book, but feel connected to this trail community across the country. And I think that's been so hard during COVID, is this sense of disconnection, but feeling it in person when we're able to go outside as hikers, and then remembering in settings like these that there's a lot of people who are still really committed towards working towards the common good and protection of these trails, and who just like genuinely want to help hikers and are so grateful to be a part of the trail community. So Frodo, Scout and Frodo, I was hoping either one of you could sort of send us off today with some thoughts about how hikers can give back and get involved right now, how we can feel connected in a positive way, and also just letting us know about any places we can go to follow you, follow your writings, support you, find out more about you. Just what parting words do you have for us today?
So to help out and be a part of it, it's fairly easy. Appalachian Trail Conservancy, the Sandy Marr, the executive director, I know well. Any dollar, any volunteer hour you put into the ATC will be treated with respect and will be valued. Same with each and every one, Pacific Crest Trail Association, Continental Divide Trail Coalition, and that mighty mouse that roars, the Partnership to the National Trail System. Yeah, give back in any way. It was local trail organizations, any which way. We need you. We need you. One of the I was asked once, what's the creation story for the Pacific Crest Trail? And what it is that every time the trail is threatened, and that happens often, one person or a small group of people steps forward into that breach, because we can only lose the trail once. And today, that small group can be each one of us who are on the call today. Yeah. And if I can leave you with a thought, and then I'll mention a couple links. Out there, Frode and I, we found a community we never knew existed, but we always wanted to be with. Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to do that by going out 5 months. Today, tomorrow, go out, walk to the park. I've had people who, after listen talk much, they write me, say, Scout, I actually went out and walked the park. I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. I had conversations with 2 neighbors I never talked to before. We are different outside. We leave so much of the junk behind. So do that. Go out any way you can. And finally, to get in touch with me, barneyscoutman.com is a good way. I hope you will get yourself a copy of Journeys North.
Yes.
I poured my heart and soul in it. There we go. Thank you, Jen. Like it too. And but I hope to see someday in one way or another, see many of you on trail or at an event. And if you do, remind me that we shared this time together. We were all part of the same trail family for this near hour.
Yes, and I want to thank you for being a part of our book club. We do have Journeys North at our shop and online, and Scout was so generous. He signed, I can't remember how many, 50, 75 copies, and sent it to us. So all the books that we have in stock are author signed. I also, as soon as Scout and I connected for our tech check today, I was like, look at your library, and like immediately pulling out books I saw that I recognized. He has a Beauty and the Beast library that he built with his daughter. So that is my new, envy. I'm not crafty. I'm not HGTV oriented, but that I love. And I also want to plug some more books before we sign off today. One I saw on Scout's shelf, and that is, it's not part of our book club this year because it just came out like a few days ago. So maybe we'll have it next year. But our friend Heather Anderson, Anish, she just had an AT memoir about her FKT on the trail. It's called Mud, Rocks, Blazes. And I'll be doing an event with her that's not part of this series, but we are going to have an evening event on March 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And so if you want to hear about that new release, I hope you'll join us then. I'll be sure to share the links on our social media. Our next Armchair Adventure Book Club is going to be first Thursday of April. I'm super excited. I saw Richard Louv on your shelf, Scout, but I don't know. I think it was Last Child in the Woods. This is Richard Louv.
He's on the cover of A Journeys North.
Yes, and he blurbed. We're all friends. He blurbs for Scout, but he has this amazing book called Our Wild Calling that talks about the connection we have as humans to animals, and we're going to dive deep into that next month, and Rich is going to join us. The time shifted slightly. Usually we do this at noon. I think it's going to be 1 o'clock or maybe 2 o'clock next month. And then our May book is going to be Way Out There by J.R. Harris. So those are the 2 we have left in the series. They've all been so great. The authors are just such wonderful people. And I always this is my favorite day of the month, probably, to get to do book club. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Scout. Thank Frodo for us. And thank you, ATC, our nonprofit partner, for this. And we will see you all down the trail.